One, two, three, two, two, three.
Okay.
So, yeah, you were saying that you really like both of these songs, I believe, right?
I love both of these songs. I don't just like them. I love both of these songs. One of my notes about both of these songs is that how could you not like either one of these songs?
Yeah, this is really hard. It's like
Really hard.
for those of you who didn't read like the thumbnail or whatever, this is we're doing Money Trees by Kendrick Lamar and You Can't Always Get What You Want by the Rolling Stones. And yeah, they are both great songs. And I have to admit that I was not familiar with the Money Trees song before we planned this out. You said, you need to go. First of all, you said you need to go listen to that whole record. But the definitely that song is one of the ones that stood out. It's just like where has this been all my life? But I mean, this was, I guess that came out when my oldest daughter was little, and it just kind of got lost
Yep.
in the ether or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is good. This is good stuff.
So I'll tell you, that happened to me when my daughter was born. Like most hip hop that came out,
Mhm.
like post February '07, like
Yeah.
summer of '08, I pretty much missed because of my
Yeah.
kid. So I understand that. Let me ask you a quick sidebar question.
Sure.
What other songs stood out? Did you listen to Good Kid, Mad City all the way through?
I have not had the chance to listen to like every single song all the way through. I mean, I obviously knew the swimming pool song, and I knew the "Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe" song. Like those I had heard before. And there it strikes me that there are reasons that those were singles. Like those were
Mhm.
they have that vibe to them. So I really like both of those. The real song is really, really good too.
Yes, that's my
Um,
favorite song on there.
we'll we'll probably do. We don't want to get into that too much now. We'll probably do a whole other episode using that one and any
That's
number of
special, special.
that's a good song. But I will again most of these songs, other than like the famous ones they played on the radio that I've just named, um, I've not listened to more than once or pieces of once. Um, like I said, I've not been in the. I mean, this is for those of you who don't know, I'm a teacher, and so this is like the end of the school year, and I'm kind of so I have both end of school year stuff that's going on now and um small child stuff that's going on now. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, so there's not a ton of time to just like sit down and listen to Good Kid, Mad City as good as it is. So, but that's on the. It feels like a summertime record. Like it feels like that's the vibe that I get from it anyway.
It feels like very it's almost like it's still West Coast because it's really funky
Yeah.
and really groovy and really catchy, but there's something dark and dense about it.
Oh yeah. It is darker than a lot of them are, or the
Yeah.
ones I'm familiar with anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like Dr. Dre or DJ Quick or like E40 or Too Short or Ice Cube's big hit or Snoop, definitely not Snoop's big hit records. This is like a different type of vibe that he's on, but it's still that same West Coast groove and that kind of funk to it. And so it's really I mean, obviously, as I think people are realizing, Kendrick is really good at pushing the boundaries of things.
Yeah.
And even this Money Trees is kind of like even is pushing the boundaries of like, because this was an anthem
Mm-hmm.
and it's a West Coast anthem. And this is where everybody's saying your bitch comes from. You know what I mean? It was really
Okay.
popular. Yeah, like this is where it kind of caught fire. So this was the dope song on the album that everybody gravitated to that wasn't the single, you know?
It feels like you stick your arm out the window and you're doing this kind of deal. Like that's that kind of smooth. But you're right. He is both on this song and on many of the other songs is talking about some darker stuff. This is not just it's not all party songs. This in contrast to the last two we talked about. But no, this is I wouldn't call it dark, but like it is like on the. It's not Ain't Nothing But a G thing. I mean, it's not that kind of
right. This is This is like closer to, this is what I mean. This song is closer to like a Bird in Hand by Ice Cube or something like that. And if you're not familiar with a Bird in Hand, like just go listen to it. Yeah, yeah. It's one of Ice Cube's better records. This isn't like A Good Day by Ice Cube.
Yeah. I obviously know that one, but like,
yeah, yeah. It's not that, but it's kind of at the same level.
Yeah. Okay.
In a lot of ways. Yeah. And it's a modern day, what you would say, hip hop classic.
Okay. Like, again, this was the first time I'd heard it. I mean, I've listened to it, a dozen times over the past couple days, but it's, yeah, it just, it sticks with you. Like,
Yeah.
and obviously you're going to be able to tell me more about it, but it's one of those things that I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like, one of the things that I've noticed on a lot of the songs that crossed over into like the wider culture, and this one, either if it did, I wasn't familiar with it. I mean, it's is that they have melodic hooks to it, and that's, and I've been walking around. This is one of the notes that I wrote. Like, I've been walking around singing Halle Berry Hallelujah like for the last 24 hours now. Like, it just sticks, and it's just one of those things. So, and I'm not sure exactly what it means or what he's talking about, but it does stick.
Well, no. Well, let's unpack some of what it means.
Yeah, please do.
Well, I actually wanted to go to the hook first because a lot of the times when I talk about Kendrick, I talk about how sometimes what he does is so visceral and so poignant that it doesn't connect. Listener-wise, this is the antithesis of that.
Oh, yeah.
This connects. So let's go to the hook. It go Halle Berry or Hallelujah. Now, one thing that I'm starting to notice from him over the course of time, and this was very early on for him, obviously, because it's on the second album, but lust is a big theme for him.
Yeah.
So Halle Berry is the lust.
Yeah.
Hallelujah is the savior. And then right after that, what's the next bar? Pick your poison.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're doing. And then it gets personal. And then it gets into Black culture. Everybody gonna respect the shooter. But the one in front of the gun lives forever. Yeah. That's timeless.
Yeah.
That's timeless thought right there. That's brilliant, excellent writing. See, he gets you with the Halle Berry Hallelujah, but then he hits you with that poignant
and you're
shot.
like, oh.
Right. And then he breaks down himself. And I've been hustling all day, this away, that away, through canals and alleyways, just to say, money trees is the perfect place for shade. And that's just how I feel. How many people feel that way? How many people feel that way after a hard day of work? How do you feel when you feel, everything that you're going through right now with being slightly, under the weather, having a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old? It's the end of the year with these high school students.
It's tough. Right? Like, it's,
you want to get to the money trees in the shade.
Yeah. You're just ready to be done with it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or at least have like the baby's asleep now. And so it's, you get those pockets in the day where you're like, and kind of breathe out a little bit. Because in the grand scheme of things, my children are delightful and they're wonderful, and they're not, I don't want to use the word bad kids, but people, they're not wild particularly at all. But
they're 1 and they're 3. It's normal.
But yeah, exactly. She is a wrecking ball, like the little one is, and and like you said, it's developmentally appropriate. That's what you should be doing, but it's a lot. So,
both things can be true.
Yeah. So, but yes, I feel the money trees, like you just want the. I mean, the southern version of that's the front porch and the shade tree, like that's the rocking chairs and stuff like that.
Front porch, something like that. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much just talking. I mean, everybody's looking for their escape out of their way. Like, he's talking about the rat race too, in a sense. It's like he's talking about the rat race from the hood perspective, but it's still the rat race when he's talking about going through canals and alleyways, this away, that away. That's why I was bringing up your situation where you can just get pulled so many ways by life that you're just like, where's the shade? It's hot.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, like I said, I have not listened to it enough to like really, really dig into it. So I'm glad we're doing this. But it's one of those things, like you said, it connects. Like even if it's one of those things, and we'll come back around to the Rolling Stones song in just a second too. But like, they're both songs that are not lyrically direct, particularly, but they do still like hit you, and you don't really. I don't say you don't really know why, but this song, the Money Tree song, connected with me before I like dug into the lyrics to understand what he's talking about. Like it's so, and that's a hard thing to do, just because of the vibe of it connected before the lyrics did.
Well, he does a brilliant job of expressing the inner city angst and despair without you really, really catching it, because he's riding the beat so well. And the word usage is so key here, because nothing is overcomplicated about any of the words, but the way that he's formulating them to ride to this beat is masterful, so that he can express himself. Like, he's expressing things about Black life in Compton or just in poverty. And I pulled the lyrics up because it's like, I know the lyrics, but it's important when you isolate them.
Yeah, it is.
Hear what he's saying. Hot sauce all in our top ramen, you bitch. We're putting hot sauce in our ramen noodles. Listen to what he says. Park the car and then we start rhyming, you bitch. Like, if you listen to the album in sequence, he's actually explaining in this verse what's happened before on the album. The first song is Shireen, Master Splinter's daughter. He's talking about, I fucked Shireen, then went to tell my bros. Well, that happened on the record already. When he's talking about the car, park the car and we start rhyming, that's backseat freestyle.
Okay.
He's talking about the album on the album. He's
that's
like,
very meta. Yeah.
Well, why I was telling you about it being the West Coast Illmatic is because he's explaining like a day in the life of Compton, and Illmatic is kind of like a day in the life in Queensbridge. And it's done poetically so well that you miss a lot of the despair initially, because the melody and the groove and the hooks are so.
Because you're doing like this right there, and like, oh, he's talking about some. Wait, no, like, this is right. Like he slips a line about Uncle Tony getting shot in the head, like in the middle of all of, like, it's just like, oh.
Listen, he goes, gang signs out the window, you bitch. Hoping all of them offend you, you bitch. Like,
Yeah.
He slides in, but it's so catchy, it's so groovy. You're like, oh, did he just say?
Wait, yeah.
Like, oh, you're like,
did I catch that right? Yeah.
But this is about the despair. Listen to what he's saying. The only thing we had to free our mind. He's talking about the rhyming. He's like, that's where the rhyming came from. This song is about escapism.
That's what I got too. Like, you're trying to get away from.
Yes, it's very much about escapism. And then listen to what he says. He goes right back to the moment and gets visual with you again. He said, then freeze that verse when we see dollar signs. So listen to what he says after that. You're looking like an easy come up, you bitch. That means they're about to rob somebody. They see somebody.
There's lots of robbing stuff in there, right? Like,
yeah. So they're talking about, and listen to what they're saying. A silver spoon, I know you come from, you bitch. And so they're saying, so now the angst is being expressed about the poverty disparity, okay? And then he goes, that's a lifestyle that we never knew. And now you feel the personal despair about it. It's like, I don't know nothing about that. And it lets you know how deep the despair goes on the last line. Go at a reverend revenue.
It's like, ooh.
And so let's go to one of the things that he is masterful at and one of the best ever at. That's ending verses.
Okay.
He's one of the best verse enders ever. That's part of what is so striking about him as an MC. I've never considered him lyrically to be Black Thought.
No, that's a high bar, dude.
No, it is an extremely high bar, but he's just as good, if not better, than almost all of them at hitting you with the ending that's just like,
ooh.
Well, okay. That's all over his last album. His last album is actually like a master class in like ending a song verse-wise.
Okay.
It's actually one of the better points of his last album. I'm talking about Mr. Morale.
Mr. Morale, yeah.
So you're getting a whole lot about Compton, about Kendrick, about the album about inner city, about poverty, about the economic despair, about how the economic despair looks from the poverty level, from somebody who's living through the poverty. So much stuff. It's 16 bars.
Yep. One verse.
One verse.
Yeah.
So the song is deep like that. And I know we could go in further and talk about this song all day. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, I mean, because I'm familiar with the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want. What made you want to juxtapose this to Money Trees? I found that to be fascinating.
It's all full disclosure. I've been looking for one to pair with that song anyway, like just because I love that song a lot. But you can't always get what you want. Is the title of that song is the theme of Money Trees too. Like you can't, like you're trying to get something. I mean, that song, we'll get into it more later, but like is more about misconnections, like at a party, kind of, more or less. I mean, that's how the song is framed anyway, where you're like, what you're there and you're like seeing people that are all want to be connected with other people, but are just like missing it because they're drunk or they're whatever. They're like not like all there. But the frame of the song is not as important as the chorus, which is what's quotable. You can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need, right? And that feels to me thematically very similar to what Kendrick's getting at. Like he is living or narrating a story of living in poverty and economic struggles, from what you just said, and is talking about robbing reverends or like robbing people's houses while they're at work, which is the what you need part, I guess, sort of. Like it is, that's how he's solving the problem, or I don't know if that is like an autobiographical detail of him, or it's just part of like the persona, like it's a storytelling thing. But I think it's that's why I connected those two in my head anyway.
No, I actually felt thematically these things are expressing similar endpoint notions, if that makes sense. It's like the expression of it in the song may not be as clear, but the overall theme, and there are like connecting points. And I think you did a good job of connecting those. So I understood it. It's just like at first time, I was like, why did he pick such? And then I thought about it. I was like, well, then even melody wise, both of these melodies are really infectious. And both of these songs are really masterfully put together from beginning to end. And I think there's like a deeper message about acceptance to both of these songs.
Yeah. About acceptance of what your life is. And and that doesn't mean, it's like the end of the James Baldwin essay, The Notes of a Native Son, which I teach all the time, where he says like you can't I'm going to have to pull it up because I want to quote him correctly. He says something like, you have to, the man to survive in this world has to like hold two ideas in his head, which seem to be in opposition, one of them is that the world is as it is, and that they're going to be people against you. I'm paraphrasing it badly because James Baldwin is an incredible writer, and I don't want to do not justice to his words, but you have to kind of accept things as they are and the people as they are, but you also have to try with all of your strength to change them. Like you have to do both of those things. And that's kind of the idea that I'm getting, I guess.
No. I know exactly what reference you're speaking to. I think James Baldwin is extending upon the thought of W.E.B. Du Bois' thought about the veil of the Black man. This is more of the practitioner of it, in more of a updated thought. Not even saying a better one, but that's kind of where that pattern comes from. But you're right. Like, this is all over both of those songs. Yeah.
And I want you to talk a little bit about the flow in this song, because I don't know what it's called or how it works, but like I've been listening to and maybe it's a West Coast thing, but
Mhm.
it's a lot of the East Coast stuff that I've heard um has like pretty hard end stops at the lines. Like it rhymes the end of the line and it stops, and then he does like even like Biggie was where's rhyming in the middle of the lines and the ends. There's still they're concrete ends of the lines, and this kind of loops, right? This it's like the beginning of the line is connected to the end, is connected to the beginning. It kind of goes in a circle, and there's not really. I think you use the phrase "riding the beat." I believe is what you said, but he's like there's not the same kind of pauses at the end. It kind of goes.
The pauses are more rhythmic. They're
Yeah.
more in line with maybe. Okay, they're more in line with the composition of maybe actual music than maybe the composition of a 16 bar format.
Okay.
So thereby the words are shorter and more choppy, but flow together better because of how the endings go together and are pieced back together to start it again. I think the person who is most probably notable for that on the West Coast is Snoop, probably the ability to do that. But it is a trait of most artists. Like one of the things that I love about Money Trees is he's like, because they're from Compton, which is, of course, Southern California. Right. But he goes, bump that new E40 after school. Well, that's Bay Area.
I was about to say E40 is Bay, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's NoCal. Those are two different worlds. I'll tell people all the time, Southern California, Northern California could be like North Carolina and South Carolina, two totally different states. Like there's more of a difference between Northern California and Southern California there is between North Carolina and South Carolina by
For
far.
sure. Yeah. No, my wife is from or lived most recently in San Francisco or north of San Francisco. So yeah, and I've not been to LA, but I mean I have friends that live there or whatever. But it's so it's a whole different world. I remember the first time I went to the beach, like the Pacific Ocean beach. We went Monterey, essentially, which is in Northern California, probably 3 hours south of San Francisco ish. And I mean, it's the rocky and cold and whatever, and it's beautiful. I mean, and I went in like the end of July, and it was like 60 degrees, and it's beautiful, but you're wearing a hoodie out on the beach, which is not LA at all.
It's not. So, and he speaks about, and here goes the poverty, back to reality, we poor, you bish, another casualty at war, you bish, that's the despair. And then he brings up the line that you're talking about, 2 bullets in my Uncle Tony head. And now he's getting reflective because he's gone. He say one day I'll be on tour, you bish. Like now he's remembering what he said because he's gone. That's how the despair, and listen to what he's doing, the whole you bish. Is what's taking all of the pain and taking all of the edge off because people are so locked in on that. And that's the groovy and the wavy part about where he's hitting you with the simple stupid. And you're getting lost in that to the point that you're rapping the stuff. You're like, hold on, his uncle's dead. Like, hold on.
Yeah,
like,
wait. Yeah, he just kind of slides that in there.
Right. They're throwing up gang signs out the window. Like, hold up. Like, yeah. But it doesn't sound like that or feel like that, does it?
No, but he also uses the yabish part to connect the lines together. Like that's what makes it loop, like that echo.
That's kind of what makes it funky too, and that is what enabled the flow to not feel choppy. Because if you actually just listen to it and isolate it outside of the yabish and how he stretches it out, it's kind of choppy. Even the hook, they go Holly Berry chop, a hallelujah chop. Pick your poison, tell me what you're doing, chop. So it's choppy, but when he does the yabish, it starts doing the loop.
You like. I found myself bobbing my head like that. Just like that's just you have to like it's one of those like we talked about the Rosa Parks and the Queen song last time. Like you dance in your chair. You're like that's what they and that's what great songs do. Like. You find yourself kind of grooving in your seat or stand or wherever you are, just reflexively almost. Like you're not even thinking about it. Like, oh, I'm going to dance to the song. It doesn't happen like that. It just kind of go. Like that's just how it is.
Oh, it happens. And you know it when you hear it. This is one of those songs immediately. And when you hear it for the first time it comes on, you're like, oh no, I like this record. That's what I mean about both of the records. It's like, how can you hear both of these records come on and be like, I don't like that. Nah.
Nah. Yeah. There's a reason you can't always get what you want is like if you have never put on a rock and roll album in your whole life and you're listening, because I know you have, but like if somebody listening to this hasn't, and you still know this song, like this song has been in like hundreds of TV shows and movies and whatever. They play it in all kinds of like super dramatic, sentimental moments. Like it's just
part of popular culture.
Yeah.
The Stone song is part of popular culture. I want to show one more thing about
definitely
trees, and then we can kind of slide over to the Stones, of course. He's speaking about how we spend the black dollar on one bar in here that I think is very important that people miss. Like that's why I said we could spend like all day unpacking this song. He says, pull off at churches with Pirelli skirting. Okay. So they're at Church's Chicken, which is like literally the worst, cheapest chicken that you could buy. You'll only find it usually in impoverished areas. But then he goes, pull off at Church's Chicken. So we're going to a poor place to eat, but our car has Pirelli tires.
Those are serious. Like I know what those are. Like those.
Yeah, those are serious tires. Okay, so he's speaking to how we foolishly spend our black dollars too with one bar. He's speaking, look, we're really this poor, but we're pulling off in Pirelli skirt. Look what we spent our money on when we got some money.
Yeah.
So he's strong, and this is one of his better moments, like ever.
And implying that is he implying that they should be spending it on better food? Like, is that part of the implication, or is that not?
I think that's part of the reality of the song too, because there really is like a Church's Chicken, like, or used to be at least, like around where he's from and stuff. So like there's a lot of reality on Good Kid, Mad City, especially if you've lived out there, the streets and the stuff that he's bringing up and like all that. Yeah, it's all very, very real and not uncommon for you to see something like that. That's what I'm saying. He's not just speaking to his personal situation. He's speaking environmentally to what he's seeing going on.
And he's also using, I mean, the metaphor of a money tree is, the cliche that goes with that though is money doesn't grow on trees. Like that's the cliche that goes with it. And I mean, he's also kind of using these people's houses as money trees. Like that's the part of the metaphor too. But money doesn't grow on trees is the thing. Like, so, which kind of gives you both sides of the story, right? I mean, that you can't always get what you want, but and try sometimes you might get what you need, right? One of the ways that I think the song is structured similarly to Money Trees is that it is just a simple 2-chord vamp. Is the whole song basically, and it kind of has the effect of looping too. I mean, it's just it's 1 to 4. Right, it's just that over and over again. Right. It's like, I saw her today, the reception. Right. And it's just that. And then you can't always get what you want. It's just the same 2 chords. The only difference is, like, usually in a blues kind of format, you have the 1-4-5 1. Right. But he resolves it differently when the always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. So I'm sorry for my voice. I've been sick for 2 weeks, but that's probably a good place to start because it loops like that. It's just 2 chords over and over and over that connect and propel the song forward, even though it's doing it kind of slowly. It's a simple 2-chord vamp that does the same thing I think Money Trees does, where it just kind of connects the ends of the lines and just moves forward. Even if it's a slow vibe, it moves it forward in the same kind of smooth way.
No, it's both of these songs are very funky and groovy, both of them. I want to talk about the beginning of this song. You know what my note was? Just the beginning.
Tell me.
When I heard it again, because it's been a while since I've actually listened to the record from the beginning and not caught it on some sort of commercial ad or movie or something.
It's everywhere.
From onset. I was like, remember when Will Ferrell's like losing his mind in Old School and he's like, it's glorious. That's how I felt when the record came on. I'm like, the come on is like epic, and you're almost like, this Rolling Stones record? Like,
for those of you who don't know, it starts with the I looked it up actually. It's the London Bach Choir. It's a choir, a full choir singing what is the first verse and the chorus before Mick starts singing.
Okay, so first of all, it's like they brought everybody in town out to do this record.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the beautiful things about this record for me is that, well, it's really hard to implement all these sounds and instrumentations, live instrumentations.
Oh, yeah.
That it's clear to hear these live instrumentations and voices. And I was thinking, I got in quotations, choruses, choirs, and it's all put together brilliantly and it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And that's hard to do. I mean, those of you who don't know, who have never heard this is like 7.5 minutes. This is one of the longest rock and roll kind of songs. And like I said, it's based on this, just like it only has 3 chords in it. And one of the chords only gets played like a couple times. So it's really just 2, basically. Yeah. They take it and make it with a choir, and they have background singers, and they got an organist, and they got all kinds of stuff that are not members of the original Rolling Stones.
Okay, so is that instrumentation that you're hearing at the end for about 30 seconds? Is that the organ? Because I couldn't put my hand on it.
I'm not placing.
It was moving key wise, like at the speed that a piano or a keyboard
probably was then. Yeah,
that was the organ. I was wondering what that was because it happened so fast and so brief. I was like, that's brilliant. I'm like, what is that? They bought out everything for this song. Are those maracas that they're using?
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff. Mick Jagger, the lead singer for the Rolling Stones. I know I'm explaining this for the people. I know you know this, but we'll also play sometimes on stage. We'll play like a tambourine or maracas, like while he's singing too. Like he's, that's a pretty common, especially British lead singer of this kind of generation, do that pretty regularly. Mick Jagger is one of the first. One of the first front men for these kind of bands that is not playing an instrument at the same time. He's just there singing. He can play instruments and he does the percussive stuff or whatever, but they had 2 guitarists already and whatever, and he never plays on stage really.
Okay, I didn't know that he could play. Fascinating. All right. I put, for our hip hop listeners, if you don't know who Mick Jagger is, I have a hip hop line that will contextualize it for you.
Good, perfect.
From Jay-Z. Mick Jagger invented swag, popping bottles, putting supermodels in the cab.
That was Mick. That was Mick. Yeah.
That's your hip hop contextualization for who he is. But stylistically, vocally, he's very throaty and captivating. And I immediately heard, kind of going back to the song Otis that I just quoted from Kanye and Jay, I can tell he's an Otis Redding and Bobby Womack fan. Is that?
Yeah. They were big time into the soul singers of the 60s. Like they play a lot of songs that they even covered some. Like they played a lot. They took a lot of that style from.
He's got the chops to do it.
And he doesn't have Mick Jagger is the opposite end of the vocal spectrum from Freddie Mercury, who we just talked about. Like he is not. He is good at what he does. He is dancing on the stage. He is an entertainer for sure. But I know it's you can't, if you just say he's not Freddie Mercury as a singer. Well, duh, nobody is Freddie Mercury as a singer. But he's not that kind of pyrotechnic singer. But you can't get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need, right? That's like he gets most of their songs are pretty simple. So
well, that's what I mean about the line about how he invented swag. He has the type of confidence on record that is infectious that you can even hear on record, and that's hard to pull off. Like that's that's all-time high-level charisma and confidence when it comes off on record. Like we know it comes off on stage and who he is on stage and who he is behind the scenes. Like that's known. But when you come off on record that way, like he sings with conviction. And it actually made me think of another Black soul singer from the 60s. And I think this is the most accurate comparison. David Ruffin from the Temptations.
Okay, I can get with that. Yeah. Love some. I mean, that voice though.
Yeah.
Man.
But David's got that deep. I mean, David Ruffin, I mean, is a better singer than Mick Jagger, but Mick has some of that and some of that vocal wise throatiness in him, and David has a lot of mixed swag. You feel me? That's why I started the comparison, because like no, David was kind of tall and dashing's kind of known behind the scenes, like, oh, you know, this guy.
And Mick wasn't even that way behind the scenes. These are like, we talk about the Beatles and the Stones being like the two prototypical rock bands. Like there are others that come after them, but most rock and roll music, not every single bit, but most rock music that comes after the 1960s is at least in part modeled on one of these two bands, the Beatles or the Stones. And the Stones are the bad boys. The Beatles are kind of like the hippie, in their later years anyway, kind of the hippie, Hare Krishna, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But Stones are like, I mean, you saw Mick at Studio 54 with Freddie Mercury and and Bowie and all those guys. Their leather jackets, their cigarettes, I mean, the song comes off an album called Let It Bleed. Like it's their song content is, I mean, there's sex and there's drugs. I mean, all of those like classic rock and roll stereotypes are rolling. They don't originally come from the Rolling Stones, but
they're the prototype.
They're the one that everybody's copying.
Yeah, they're the prototype. So I thought, and this was just one of the questions that I had, and I think you actually answered it. It's like, did all the big like rock stars hang out together the way like the big rappers do? You know, like, because it's like when like Nas has a song on King's Disease 2 last year where he talks about Death Row East, where he talks about having a run-in with Tupac. And he used to hang out with Biggie before they were both signed. It's like, did the rock stars hang out with each other? But you just spoke to David Bowie and Freddie Mercury and Mick all in Studio 54. So that kind of answers my question. But my next question would be, were anybody from the Beatles and the Stones like cool? Was there like any competitive, like?
They're not like, they're like,
I mean, they're stylistic.
They moved in the same circles. Like they
know each other, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're both British.
Right.
Like, and the Stones, I don't remember where they're from. The Beatles are famously from Liverpool, but I don't know, the Rolling Stones don't have I mean, obviously they were all born somewhere, but like they don't have like, I mean, Lennon and McCartney both were born in Liverpool, went to middle school together, like had known each other since they were little kids. That kind of story that goes with them. There's not the same kind of story, or at least not that I'm aware of, with the Rolling Stones. Maybe somebody, if it exists, can tell me in the comments, but it's not the same kind of thing. But the Stones have still, actually, they still play live, and they're in their 70s now, the members that are still living, and Keith Richards should not still be living. Like he was one of the most famous like drug addict, like drink you under the table, drug you under the table kind of like there's no way his body should have survived that. Like their original, not their other guitarist, Brian Jones, he's a multi-instrumentalist, was also a drug addict in the 60s, and he died like in the late 60s, like right before this album came out, actually. But Keith Richards was every bit as much of an addict, and he has survived and still plays now. He's, I don't know how old he is, 70 something.
We have no idea.
No. But anyway, the point I was making is that the Stones had the Beatles were 1960, I mean, in their famous period, like 1962-ish to 1970. Like that's, I mean, they played together before that, but like that's when they were famous. And the Rolling Stones came out about the same time in early 60s, but they still play now, and they're still releasing music now. So they're, I mean, like most people know "Start Me Up," the song "Start Me Up." That's like early '80s. So like 25 years after their, or 20 years really after their like first come up, is he's still playing. They're still playing songs like that. Um, but at the same time, they're not. They're a band, right? The and they don't, or have not worked without each other in the same way that the Beatles were able to. Like Mick Jagger has solo album stuff, but and the others have like side projects or whatever too, but they're not, I don't say they're not good because I'm not really familiar with them, but they did not penetrate into the popular culture really. Whereas I know we have talked, behind the scenes about the problematic nature of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So leave that aside for a second. But all four of the members of the Beatles are also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as individuals too.
Individuals, correct.
Yeah. So they all had productive, impressive careers post being a member of that group too, in a way that the Stones didn't. I don't know if they didn't try to or just didn't, but
I think that goes down to the songwriting, actually. If we just being about it. But here was something that I did realize. Like, timeless themes make for timeless music.
Mm-hmm.
It's another, this is a prime example of a timeless theme providing timeless music. And it's also really, when you really listen to what's going on, it's just a great jam session.
Yeah.
It's like, it's got a little bit of everything that you would want in a jam session. Like the chants at the end, is that that's coming from, that's not the choir. The choir's at the beginning. The chants at the end is too. I'm like, that's not the Stones. That might be, is that some more background singers?
Yeah, they're different background singers, yeah.
Yeah.
And they sing harmony in the choruses near the end too. Like
yeah, that part. And it really made me say this at the end. They're the stadium flow kings. Their stuff's made for the stadium.
Oh yeah, it is.
On in the stadium, it's live, man. Yeah. Especially if you can like, and they can, because they got it like that, man, bringing out the band, the backup, choir, chorus, organist, maracas, mix beating the tambourine. Like, yeah.
Like you can start, usually they'll play, as I remember, I've never seen them live. I've watched videos and stuff. Sometimes they'll play like like an audio clip over the speakers of the choir playing at the beginning of the song. But this song, it has a crescendo, right? Like it gets, like you could start, and they do start basically with just Keith playing the guitar and Mick singing. Like the first verse after the choir part, like is just that. And it's almost like every verse and every chorus they add more to it. And it becomes this huge thing by the end.
It's got momentum, crescendo,
which is hard to do over 7.5 minutes. Like and to keep it up.
It is. That's why I said it's a jam session of the highest order, because I can't think of a 7.5 minute like rock song that carries you to the end as easily as this one does. It's like an easy 7.5 minute listen. Yeah. It's not like, oh my God, like this song should have been over a couple minutes ago, maybe, or no, it carries all the way to the end. It's very, very accomplished.
Yeah, there's some that do that, like Stairway to Heaven does, for example. Like that's also that long, but the Stairway to Heaven also has like 10 different parts, and this one is just like 2 chords. So they are both incredible songs, but they're very different in how they execute that.
Yeah. There's more going on in the actual instrumentation of Stairway to Heaven.
Oh yeah, tons more. Yeah. All of them are, I don't want to say better musicians because they're not trying to do the same thing, but they are,
just sounds better.
They would be, I guess, what we would call more technically proficient musicians. Like they are, like Robert Plant has a higher voice and can sing more different notes, and Jimmy Page can play more guitar. Like he's like all up and down the guitar neck or whatever. And again, it's not, neither of them are better or worse. They're just doing 2 different things.
Stylistically different.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to get into Zeppelin sometime too, but that's another one of those like prototype bands. I mean, they come sort of from the Rolling Stones school, but they're taking it and like exploding it out. We'll get to that later. Yeah, do you have any other questions about this? Like it's a great song.
It is. I did just put very few songs are funky, groovy, classical, soulful, all in the first 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has all of those components musically in the first 2 minutes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard pull off. And that's part of like the buy-in with the song and the instrumentation, even though it's kind of like the instrumentation on here is very carefully chosen because it's sparse, but
Mm-hmm.
the instrumentation is still a highlight because of the different things going on with the maracas, with the organ.
Mm-hmm.
It's not complicated, but the way that it's being placed is very delicate in a way.
It is, yeah. You're getting what you need, right?
Yeah.
Again,
yeah.
I mean, it fits, right? I mean, it's one of those songs that all of the pieces fit together, and it's hard to say about a 7.5-minute song that there's not a piece out of place,
right?
But there's not. Like there's everything is there on purpose, and everything is there because it needs to be. But you also have the same thing, like they say about most great songs, most great songwriting, that despite all of the instrumentation and despite all of the pyrotechnics and all of the add-ons and the multi-tracked albums and stuff like that, that if it's really a great song, somebody can sit there and play guitar, like one acoustic guitar, and play it and sing it, and it still comes off. Or piano, I guess you can play the piano and sing it, and it still comes off. And like this song also does that. Like I could just sit here and play it on the guitar, by myself, and it would still come off. It would feel different, but the song still works in that.
You want to know what it is? It's one of those things. If you were to sit on your front porch and play it,
mm-hmm.
people in your neighborhood walking by would sing the words like to it.
Yeah,
it's one of those.
Yeah.
Like you could just sit out on your front porch and play it, and like people would walk by, be like, "Hey, they would do that."
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and that's kind of coming full circle. That's the Halle Berry Hallelujah part too. Like you just kind of,
I got you.
it hooks you in like immediately.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I got you. But that's and that's really the point at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
To bring people into your world. That's what music does. Music is a world that allows you to express what's going on in your world or as you see it, but you have to get people to buy in. And so the buy-in oftentimes is the groove, the melody, the words, and both of these songs, masterful moments. Yes.
That's exactly right. Like I have been guilty, and I wrote this note down about the Kendrick, about the song particularly, and Good Kid, Mad City in general. Like I have been guilty with music and with sports and with lots of other things too, been guilty of paying more attention to the narratives around it than the actual thing itself. Mm-hmm. Like I love reading music criticism, and I love reading about albums, and I love reading about teams and the trade season. I mean, all that stuff. Like that's interesting to me. Like all of the storylines that go with it. I'm a writer, and I like stories, so like that's interesting to me. But I was realizing this as I was listening to this song particularly, and to the other songs on Good Kid, Mad City, that I had read a ton about the narratives around Kendrick Lamar, especially around To Pimp a Butterfly, which is when I was more familiar with it. That was when my daughter, the oldest one, was old enough that I could be paying attention to other things besides her. But I remember reading more about it than listening to the record itself. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a thing that has followed him particularly over the since To Pimp a Butterfly, really. And it's a thing that you see with Mr. Morale too. that you're thinking of him, or he's being portrayed as a genius, and he is. Like he's what he's doing is really cool, but you also have to have the groove. Like you have to have both of the things. And I'm understanding now that I'm going back to listen to Good Kid, Mad City, what people are saying now, what you and Mike have been saying, particularly on According to Hip Hop. Like this is a cat that's capable of doing both, right? He is capable of being political and philosophical and narratively brilliant and make you sit there and bob your head. And the bobbing your head part's not missing completely, but in the later stuff, but it's not like this song is.
It's not like this. Okay. And so there's nothing wrong with pushing the boundaries and the limits.
Absolutely not.
His genius actually is his genius for me is tied into a few things. It's his album making ability.
Mm-hmm.
It is his juxtaposed perspectives, which is oftentimes with him. And also too, he has a very keen eye. He has what I think both you and I think we see his writer's eye.
Mm-hmm.
Like from like when he ends the Auntie Diary song, and he's like F word, F word, F word, F word, F word, but only if a white girl can call you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When he says stuff like that, it's like, oh, that's more brilliant writing than it is MCing.
Yeah.
And so part of the boundary that he's pushing is that he's forcing us to think in the capacity of how great is an MC in relationship to the writing if the non-factor is not there, because he's really the first guy that's come along that's been all-time great.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't been giving you stuff to bob your head to necessarily on a consistent basis. He's giving you, quite frankly, some of the best writing that you'll find in any genre of music, period.
Exactly.
Point blank.
And that's why he won the Pulitzer, right? Like that's the same.
And as far as hip hop writers go, and this is what I mean about he's pushing the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's a top 10 MC all time still after this album, but he's clearly like a top 5 writer, maybe like up there with Tupac and Nas and Scarface in terms of the writer that he is, in terms of like, how about this? He's not the MC Black Thought is, but Black Thought is not the writer that he is.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And so he's pushing some things about even how we view our all-time great MCs. But, and I have another podcast later today on According to Hip Hop, but one of the things that I'm going to discuss is like, well, when you brought up all those things about like, well, the political message and the making you bob your head, like all those things in the creative expression, all that, well, you know who was masterful at that?
Who?
Tupac, his idol.
Right.
And it's like, I went and listened to All Eyes on Me, which is another double album. And where he kind of loses is that it's hard to put his great hip hop stuff up against the other greats hip hop stuff like that. It's like, is Auntie Diaries a better piece of writing and maybe more important than something like, I don't know, Ambitions as a Writer? Yeah. Is it better? No.
Okay.
What I'm saying, like, you're not going to get in your car and play Auntie Diaries over Ambitions as a Writer, even though the writing is clearly superior.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Like, and I would guess Kendrick would say like the intention is not that either. Like he's not trying to do that thing.
He's not trying to do that, but we talk about the buy-in.
That's the circle, right? Yeah.
And let's get back to the circle of the buy-in. And part of what he's doing that no other great MC has really ever done, that's like at the level that he's at, well, he's not giving us any buy-in stuff really, or he's making us question what the buy-in is. I'm going to be unpacking some things about a couple of the songs that are potentially going to be singles, because one thing that he's really masterful at is actually reworking other creative ideas that have been done before. Like there's a lot of Outkast in his bag, stylistically. Like I'm going to talk about this later. There's a song in particular that's on his album, and I can go pull up a song from ATLiens that sounds just like it.
Oh, cool.
And so he's in the Outkast bag. theme wise, if you look at Kanye around the Yeezus time,
Okay.
or Nas around the Hip Hop is Dead and the N-Word album,
Okay.
entitled album time, some of the rhetoric is similar around those. Some of the stuff that even guys like Conway the Machine have been doing lately about expressing themselves, in a Scarface-like manner, been coming up. But what I really realized this too, and I'm going to talk about this too, well, his voice is some of what's hurting us.
Is it?
Yes, it is, because I thought about somebody, and the guy I thought about is Scarface. Scarface is about to retire. He just announced his last set of tickets. Part of what makes Scarface's narrative so powerful is his voice. It keeps you there. It's enchanting. It's entrancing. And so the thing with Kendrick is his voice isn't necessarily his voice isn't as powerful as his pen or his ethos.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah.
And so part of what I'm talking about, the connection, is that he needs to pick certain records style-wise that are going to help him to connect with that. Money Trees and Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe are prime examples.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
go ahead.
No, that's what I got. I'm soaking it in. Like this is not something that I'm as familiar with. So I'm learning. But I do feel that like both your point and the music. Like I remember you saying, I don't remember how long ago it was, one of the According to Hip Hop episodes, where you were talking about like you were arguing with Mike about To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City, and like, and you told him that you don't play To Pimp a Butterfly in your car like that. Like it's not, and it's not for that. Like it's not. These albums, To Pimp a Butterfly particularly, and Mr. Morale, Damn has more like radio songs, I guess, on it, but those almost play like jazz albums to me, like the Butterfly and Mr. Morale. Like you're listening to them like sitting on your chair or the couch at night and just kind of letting it kind of wash like it's that kind of music to me anyway, as opposed to songs that you would, I mean, you've said that you listen to XM radio station for the Rolling Stones for 3 days in your car. Like it's just you sit and it's writing music. And Good Kid, Mad City, I think, does that too. What little bit I've heard of it.
It does. I like the fact that you brought up the jazz interpretation, because when I did the Kendrick review, the United in Grief, the first note that I wrote, I said low end theory, as in A Tribe Called Quest, jazz infusion into hip hop. And so that's what I mean.
That way.
Like, well, he's not. How about this? And I'm saying this respectfully for the generation that's heard him. He's not as creatively genius as people are thinking, but what he is masterful at doing what people have done before, and it's taking pieces of what people have done before him and are doing around him. And he does it the best writing wise in terms of putting it together. And aesthetically, in terms of piecing it together, he's the best at that. So he's not necessarily the best MC, but he is the best at taking the pieces of our culture and putting them together in a piece of work to digest. He is the best at that because he's the best writer right now.
Right.
And the best writer usually is the best one at contextualizing our plight and our situation. So he's that. And when I'm saying he's pushing the boundary, everything that I said really don't have anything to do with being a dope ass MC or making a dope ass album. Right.
It's two different things.
Because you can be illiterate and not have any sort of real education and not being funny, but it's like you can be somebody like 50 Cent who doesn't have a college degree, is not highly educated, make Get Rich or Die Trying.
And you definitely bob your head to that one. Like that's right. That's and it's designed for that. Like that's what it's for.
There's just a lot of things with him, but Money Trees is when I talk about him connecting. It's the all-time connect moment, maybe. For him.
And